Imagine the rolling, sun-drenched hills of the Tuscan countryside. Vineyards, ancient farmhouses.
Yeah.
It's just breathtakingly beautiful, right?
The kind of place you'd think is all peace and quiet.
Exactly. But, well, for decades, beneath that surface, something really chilling was hiding. A terrifying enigma haunted the province of Florence, left this trail of death, unanswered questions that still echo today.
A really dark undercurrent.
Welcome to this deep dive.
Yeah.
Today our mission is to pull back the layers on one of Italy's most perplexing serial killer cases, the Monster of Florence. You've shared some incredibly detailed sources, mainly a big overview, and our goal is to, extract the crucial facts, the baffling twists, and the mysteries that still confound everyone.
Right. We want to understand why it's still such a puzzle.
Not just what happened.
Indeed. The Monster of Florence, or the Maniac of Couples, as he was known, active between, 1968 and 1985.
Yeah.
And this killer, or maybe killers, targeted young couples looking for privacy, established this really chilling pattern that it just terrified the nation.
It genuinely changed daily life there, didn't it?
Oh, profoundly. People actively avoided lovers' lanes, secluded spots, and despite loads of investigations, often conflicting, often controversial, well, we still don't have definitive answers. It's officially unsolved.
And that pattern, wow, it was terrifyingly consistent.
16 victims.
Usually young couples, right? Out in wooded areas, often near new moons.
And the weapons were consistent too. A .22 caliber handgun and a knife.
The method. Brutal. Male victim hit first. Then the female victim, often pulled from the car, horrific stab wounds, and, well, in about half the cases, these gruesome excisions.
Yes, skin around the sexual organs, sometimes the left breast, and often post-mortem stab wounds on the male victims too. It's incredibly grim.
What's really striking, you mentioned this, is that this was kind of the first big serial killer case targeting couples like this in Italy.
Yeah, often called the first modern serial killer case there. It wasn't just novel, it was the type of targeting, the signature. It was unprecedented for Italy then.
And the media coverage was huge.
Absolutely massive. And it didn't just report the news, it changed behavior. Authorities put out warnings, flyers even, telling couples to stay away from those spots.
Sparked a whole debate too, right? About where young people could find intimacy safely.
Exactly. Pushing for more privacy at home, maybe, to keep them out of isolated, dangerous places.
Okay, let's unpack this timeline of terror because each crime just adds another layer. The first one attributed to the monster in 1968, Antonio Lobianco and Barbara Lacci.
Insignia. And that first crime immediately set this chilling tone. Not just the brutality, but Lacci's 6-year-old son.
Asleep in the backseat, a silent witness. Just heartbreaking.
And then her husband, Stefano Mele, he was initially convicted.
Right, but later exonerated because the same gun turned up in murders years later in '82.
And here's where it gets really weird. Those bullets and casings from the monster's gun, they were found somehow inappropriately stored within Mele's original 1968 case file.
That just screams questions about the initial investigation, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It fueled all sorts of theories later on, misdirection, maybe even a cover-up.
Okay, so moving on. 1974, Pasquale Gentilcore and Stefania Pettini, the violence escalated.
Dramatically. Pettini had, I think, 97 stab wounds.
Yeah.
Just extreme brutality. And she'd actually told a friend before she died that some weird man had been terrifying her.
Chilling. Then 1981, Giovanni Faggi and Carmela Denuccio. That's the first confirmed time the killer performed the excision, right?
Yes, the pubic area. And another strange detail with that one, a paramedic, Enzo Spalletti.
Oh yeah, he talked about the murder before the bodies were even found.
He did. Got him briefly jailed. Then later that same year, October 81, Stefano Baldi and Susanna Cambi. Her pubic area was also excised, and she too had apparently been tormented by someone beforehand.
It just keeps building. 1982, Paolo Minardi and Antonella Migliorini.
Then 83, two German students, Meyer and Rusch. Police suspected one was mistaken for a woman because of long hair.
Just maybe a mistake, or the killer's target profile was shifting slightly.
Could be. Then 84, Claudio Stefanacci and Pierre Rontini. Shot, stabbed, Rontini suffered excisions too.
Which brings us to the last one, 1985, maybe the most audacious. Jean-Michel Cravchelli and Nadine Morio, the French couple in the tent.
Definitely audacious. What makes it stand out beyond the horror itself is what happened next.
The killer sent part of the victim.
Yes. A piece of Nadine Morio's breast, along with a taunting note, sent directly to prosecutor Silvia Della Monica. days after the bodies were found.
That's not just murder, that's a direct challenge, taunting the authorities.
Exactly. Showing confidence, playing with the investigation, you can see why this utterly terrified the local population.
It wasn't just fear, it really changed how people lived, didn't it?
Completely shifted the sense of safety, the public conversation, a stark wake-up call.
So the investigation itself, it became this labyrinth, and it took until 81 for them to even connect the killings with the gun.
That's right. Ballistics confirmed the same gun from 74 was used in 81, which raises questions about that initial period, especially connecting back to 68. Why did it take so long?
What does that tell us about identifying serial killers back then in Italy?
Well, look at the Sardinian trail. That highlights the early issues. After the 82 murders, police leaked false info that one victim, Minardi, had regained consciousness.
A deliberate tactic.
Seems like it. It led to an anonymous tip. Re-examine the 68 Lo Bianco Locci murder.
Ah.
And then they quickly figured out it was the same gun, which meant Stefano Mele, who was in prison during later murders, couldn't be the sole killer.
So the focus shifted.
To Mele's Sardinian relatives, acquaintances, people like Francesco Vinci, Salvatore Vinci, but that trail just fizzled out.
Why?
Because the murders kept happening while key Sardinian suspects were actually in custody, so they were released, the trail was cleared by 89. It shows the difficulty, especially with maybe questionable early evidence handling and relying on tips.
Right. But then the investigation took this huge, really controversial turn. The Smack Buddies.
Ah, yes. Computer analysis, more anonymous tips. They land on Pietro Pacciani.
A farmer.
Yeah, but with a deeply disturbing past. Convictions for rape, domestic abuse, and crucially, an earlier murder back in 1951.
And that 51 murder had similarities.
Unsettling similarities to the monster's crimes, yes.
But his case was incredibly controversial.
Hugely, a landmark case. Pacciani gets convicted in 94.
But then acquitted on appeal in 96.
Stunningly, yes. Mainly citing lack of direct physical evidence linking him to the scenes, and a lot of criticism about the police work, witness testimony handling.
And he died before a new trial could happen.
Died in 98. But the story didn't end there. Mario Vanni and Giancarlo Lotti, acquaintances of Pacciani, were tried as accomplices.
And Vanni coined that phrase, right? Back buddies. Compagni di merende.
He did. In court, claiming they were just friends having casual meals. It sounded so mundane compared to the horrific crimes, it just stuck. Became Italian slang for casual accomplices.
That's fascinating, the cultural impact. And Lotti's confessions were key.
They were the linchpin. He implicated himself, Pacciani, and Vanni. Led to convictions in 98 life for Vanni, 26 years for Lotti, upheld in 2000.
But still so much criticism, you said. Why? What were the main issues with relying on Lotti?
That's the crux of it. These sentences are widely debated. Many still see the case as unsolved precisely because there was zero physical evidence.
No DNA, no fingerprints, no gun.
Nothing connecting Pacciani, Vanni, or Lotti directly to any crime scene. And Lotti himself, well, he kept changing his story about the motive.
Like what?
First, it was rejected sexual advances. Then he claimed Pacciani planned to feed the excised parts to his daughters, which is just grotesque. And then he mentioned this doctor commissioning the crimes.
That inconsistency really undermines things, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It highlights the problem when a case hangs so heavily on one inconsistent witness, especially without forensic backup.
With all that ambiguity around the Snack Buddies, it makes sense other theories would pop up, like the esoteric or satanic cult idea.
Right. Chief Inspector Mikhail Jatari pushed that hard around 2001. Partly based on Lotti's testimony again about that mysterious doctor hiring Pacciani to kill and collect genitalia for rituals.
And what evidence did they point to?
Well, there was a pyramidal stone found near a villa where Pacciani worked. Jatari suggested it was ritualistic. Critics, like journalist Mario Spezzi, quickly pointed out those stones are just common doorstops in Tuscany. Kind of defeats that theory. They also found black magic books in Pacciani's home, which added to the mystique, fueled that narrative.
And the money. There was talk Pacciani and Vanni had unexplained cash.
Yeah, leading to theories about hidden instigators, a second level, maybe commissioning the crimes.
But again, there are counter-arguments.
Definitely. Pacciani was famously stingy, Lotti was poor, often needed help from the local priest. Vanni died pretty modestly in a retirement home, so the money wasn't necessarily proof of some grand conspiracy.
Even the former prosecutor was skeptical.
Pierluigi Vigna, yeah. He doubted any high-level instigator. The cult theory really struggled for concrete proof.
But Lotti's mention of a doctor led somewhere else too. The Narducci connection.
Exactly. Focus shifted to a pharmacist, Francesco Calamandre, and a deceased physician from Perugia, Francesco Narducci.
And Narducci's death was suspicious.
Highly suspicious. Died in Lake Trasmino in October 85, just a month after the last monster murder. His body was exhumed.
And the findings were conflicting. Drowning versus strangulation.
Precisely. Which kicked off this whole legal saga. Narducci's family investigated, Calamandre tried and exonerated. Eventually, the prosecutors leading that charge, Dutari and Mignini, were themselves indicted for abuse of office.
Wow, so that whole investigative group dissolved.
Pretty much. The Narducci angle, in terms of the monster case itself, basically led to dead ends and legal trouble.
But you said it resurfaced later.
Yeah, interestingly, Narducci's name and the esoteric angle popped up again as recently as 2018, linked to a different cold case from 1985. So even though he was cleared for the monster crimes, some questions linger. These ideas of deeper connections just won't die.
Okay, just when you think this case can't get any wilder,
Right.
there's this really unsettling, very controversial new theory linking the Monster of Florence to the Zodiac Killer.
Yeah. Proposed by an independent journalist, Francesco Amicone, starting around 2017.
And his suspect is?
An American named Joseph Joe Bevilacqua. He served in the U.S. Army, worked at the Florence American Cemetery from 74 to 88.
Which is near.
Very near the scene of the last monster crime. That proximity is key to Amicone's theory.
And Amicone's claims about Bevilacqua are pretty sensational.
Extremely. Bevilacqua apparently denied knowing Pacciani back in '94. But Amicone says Bevilacqua later admitted to him in 2017 that he'd known Pacciani since the 80s.
Okay, that's a contradiction.
A big one. And then Amicone claims that in an unrecorded phone call in 2017, Bevilacqua actually implied he was responsible for both the monster and the Zodiac killings.
Whoa, that's huge. Did he offer any proof?
Not recorded proof of that specific call, which is a major issue. Amicone also suggested Bevilacqua might be the Ulysses that Mario Vanni mentioned once, calling him the real monster.
And there was something about Bevilacqua's military past.
Yeah, Amicone claims Bevilacqua told him he was undercover U.S. Army CID in California during the Zodiac killings, involved in the Khaki Mafia inquiry, a big military corruption scandal back then.
Okay, but the craziest part of this theory has to be the bullet switching idea.
Oh, it's truly mind-bending. Amicone suggests Bevilacqua, maybe while serving in Italy in the early 70s, got access to the 1968 Melicase file.
And did what?
And swapped the original bullets and casings with ones from the gun he planned to use later for the monster crimes.
Creating an alibi for the first murder while simultaneously linking it to his future crimes.
Exactly. It's incredibly elaborate. And there was actually a 2021 ballistics report suggesting, I think, a 60% probability that some kind of bullet replacement could have happened in that file.
So where does this truly astonishing theory stand officially today?
Well, Italian authorities did get Bevilacqua's DNA in late 2020, but the investigation into him was officially dismissed in 2021. Yes. And adding to that, Amicone himself was convicted of defamation in December 2024 for making these claims. The court actually called the Zodiac monster link a bizarre theory.
So legally it seems shut down.
It does. But like everything in this case, there's always another twist. There was a report in 2023 about a male patient confessing to being Bevilacqua and the monster. Unverified, of course.
Of course.
And Amicone, as of early 2025, is apparently still claiming there are ongoing investigations into Bevilacqua in the US and Italy. Again, unconfirmed, but he's clearly not letting it go.
The sheer complexity of the Monster of Florence case, it's just staggering. Decades of investigations, convictions, acquittals.
And still, the core questions remain. Who was the main perpetrator? What really happened? What was the motive? It's all still so unclear.
It really is a testament to how elusive truth can be, isn't it? The challenge of navigating all this information, conflicting stories, and that basic human need for answers, even when they seem impossible.
So after digging through all this, what stands out to you? This maze of facts, theories, dead ends?
For me, it's just the sheer number of plausible, yet ultimately unproven directions the investigation took. It's like a hall of mirrors.
And that speaks volumes, doesn't it, about our need for narrative closure. This case has inspired so many books, films. We've seen all these theories, Pacciani, the cult, now even Zodiac.
Yeah.
What does that tell us about our collective desire for resolution when faced with something so profoundly unknown? Maybe, just maybe, how could seemingly separate infamous cases actually be connected in ways we haven't even thought of yet?
That's a provocative thought to end on. This deep dive definitely leaves you with more questions than answers, maybe. More to ponder than just the facts themselves.